Our mission is to improve the health, the financial security, and the peace of mind of the members and communities that we serve. And we talk about that often, and it's something that we take to heart.
Welcome to the Be Epic podcast, brought to you by the Sam M. Walton College of Business at the University of Arkansas. I'm your host, Brent Williams. Together, we'll explore the dynamic landscape of business and uncover the strategies, insights, and stories that drive business today. Well, today I have with me Curtis Barnett, and Curtis is the president and CEO of Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield. Curtis, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Brent, it's great to be with you.
Well, Curtis, we've known each other for some time. You serve on the Dean's Executive Advisory Board at the Sam M. Walton College of Business, so thank you for that.
Sure, my pleasure.
And coming up soon, you'll be moderating the college's Business Forecast Luncheon, and I'm really looking forward to the luncheon on January the 26th.
Yeah, I am too, Brent. It's quite an honor to be asked by you and Mervyn to get to be a part of that program. I've been a big fan for a number of years. I've attended in the past and certainly watched during the COVID years as well, and have enjoyed the program and know that the people in Northwest Arkansas in particular, but throughout the state of Arkansas, get a lot of value out of that program as well.
Absolutely. I think it is one of, if not the largest event that the college puts on each year. And if you're listening and haven't attended the Business Forecast Luncheon in the past, it is quite an event. It's people from all over the state as attendees, but it's a really great chance to get a perspective on international, domestic, and local economic issues and trends. And I assume you've taken value from those in the past.
I have, no question. I mean, for me, it falls almost perfectly for the annual report that I give to my board of directors and to our members at our annual meeting of members each year. So I take a lot of information that I gather from that meeting and share it as when we think about the economic environment as well as the opportunities that may exist over the next year or two as we look forward.
Absolutely. And the moderator serves a really important role in this. And it's very intentional that we have a business leader moderating to be able to help put it in context, for the audience and honestly probably for the forecasters or the economic experts.
Sure. Yeah, as I've thought through trends, I keep finding myself looking at it from my vantage point and try to make sure that I'm looking at it more broadly, but also have to remember you asked me to do this for a reason. So
that's right.
Hopefully my vantage point brings value to this as well.
Well, and one thing I want us to talk about is what trends are on your mind. Sure. But maybe before that, I'd love for everyone out there to get to know you a little bit better. Like I said, I've gotten a chance to know you for many years, but you serve as president and CEO of Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield. Maybe that'd be a great place to just start of, the organization and the people that you serve.
In Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, this is actually our 75th anniversary of the founding of our company. December 3rd, to be more precise, is when we've celebrated that. And we're very honored to have an opportunity to serve Arkansans as well as people from outside the state of Arkansas. Mm-hmm. We serve about 2 million members nationally. I think a lot of people may not be aware of that. A lot of that membership comes with some of the national account customers that we're able to help provide services to. We have a little over 3,000 employees, have a corporate center here in Little Rock, one in Northwest Arkansas as well, in Springdale, that we opened nearly 3 years ago now, as well as welcome centers and regional offices in 7 other parts of our state. So truly are a statewide company and one that's committed to not only helping our members, but also we do our absolute best to be ingrained in the communities that we served as well.
Because your mission, I know, is to promote health across the state.
That's right. Our mission is to improve the health, the financial security, and the peace of mind of the members and communities that we serve. And we talk about that often, and it's something that we take to heart, and it's something that our employees are very proud to serve.
Well, thank you for the way you invest in our state and in the communities around the state. Tell us a little bit about your career journey, because one doesn't just land in the president and CEO job.
Well, I've been lucky. I was elected CEO in 2017, but this is actually my 30th year with the company as well. So just celebrated 30 years. And it's one that never necessarily expected, but it's flown by the blink of an eye. It's moved that quickly. And fortunately, throughout my career, I was able to work in a lot of different parts of our company and started out working in communities, working closely with large employers, primary care physicians, hospital administrators, mainly in rural parts of our state.
Okay.
In a product at the time that we had called the Primary Care Network product. And I worked in about 8 different cities in northeast Arkansas, southwest Arkansas, and would meet with these groups of individuals, large employers, again, primary care doctors and hospital administrators, and work on ways that we could help manage cost and provide good quality health care in those local communities, in towns like Osceola, towns like Batesville, which you're familiar with, Ashdown, DeQueen, places like that. And it really gave me a love not only for our business, but a love and even greater appreciation for the people of our state and the challenges that they deal with every day to provide good, affordable health care in those communities.
One thing you said there that I think is interesting that many might not think about, for a company like Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, is that you're working with not only your members, but you're working with hospital systems, providers, community stakeholders. There's a lot of stakeholders to what you do.
Oh, no question about that. And we're so dependent on one another that the success overall is how well that you can work together and how well you can collaborate together. And that doesn't always show through. And in many cases, we find ourselves at odds on different types of issues. But at the end of the day, when we're sitting down with hospital leaders, physician leaders, we find ourselves much more often than not working toward a common goal.
Mm-hmm. So you worked in rural areas of the state, and then I assumed that continued to evolve.
I did, and was promoted from there, worked in our product development area for a period of time. Got to be the business lead in our pharmacy division, managed pharmacy division. And that was a period of time when you really saw direct-to-consumer advertising begin to take off in the pharmaceutical industry. So a lot of demand for prescription drugs at that time. So we were trying to manage the demand for those drugs with the cost implications of that as well, and how do we go about doing that. So that was a fascinating period of time. And then in the late 1990s, around 2000, we had a part of our business that was going through a systems conversion, getting ready for Y2K. You remember when that was a big deal?
I do.
And was struggling with that. And the company asked me if I would take that division over and maybe help be involved with turning that around. And that was really a turning point for my career. And it was a turning point in many ways for my life as well, because that was the first opportunity I had to lead a large group of people. So I had about 125 or so people who reported up to me at that time, which seemed very large, especially at that time. And we were going through a difficult time, but it was long days, a lot of hours, but it was one of those that was so rewarding because we turned it around and we made that organization even better than what it had been before, and really set it on a path to be successful in the future. And that was a great time.
And that sort of launched you into the next phase of your career?
It did. I continued to be involved with the operations part of our company, which when you think of a payer, a health plan like ours, that's a lot of claims processing, customer service, membership support, a lot of our information systems and technology areas. So at one point before I became CEO, I had over half of our 3,000 employees reported up to me. So really have been involved in the people side of our business, the technology side as well, but very much grounded in the people side of our business throughout my career, which has been very rewarding.
Yeah. Well, in getting to interact with you, I think probably every time that I've talked with you one-on-one, I hear you talk about your people and how important that is to you as a leader.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, it really is everything to our company. I mean, we talk every day about the human side of healthcare, and certainly technology is important, and we want to be best in class in technology and aspire to be as good as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, the human side of healthcare is what makes the difference. And so we stress that on an ongoing basis. We love our members. We think our employees are key to serving our members effectively. Employee engagement is a big part of one of the biggest metrics that we look at. We've been very lucky over the years to build a culture that really reinforces employee engagement. And we just got our results back, matter of fact, in the last couple of weeks. And once again, with the benchmarks that we do, we finished among the top 10% of employers nationally in employee engagement scores, and that's something we're very proud of.
Absolutely, as you should be. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, as you think about moderating and think about the audience that typically attends our Business Forecast Luncheon, again, businesses from throughout the state. Sure. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about some of the things that you're thinking about, maybe you don't have fully informed opinions on, or fully developed opinions on, I should say. And maybe I'll just start with healthcare.
Sure.
It's the area that you're focused in, very, very important to our Kansans. Just as you're looking at the state of healthcare and what's coming, anything on your mind?
Well, I think when you look at healthcare, probably the biggest challenge we face today is around shortage of providers. We're seeing it in physicians and nurses and other professionals as well. So, are we doing the things that we need to be doing at this point to really shore up our supply of providers going forward, especially when you look at over the next 5 or 10 years? The pandemic took a huge toll on employee participation rates in those areas, and it's one that we've got to continue to shore up and improve it as we look to the future, especially when you think about healthcare going forward, aging population. When you look at the health status, that unfortunately, if it's not getting worse, it's certainly not getting any better either. And so we're going to need a robust workforce going forward in healthcare in order to be successful. So that's one area I'd like for us to spend a little bit of time on. I think another area is, we recently a lot of attention paid to the lithium deposits in South Arkansas and lithium extraction and ExxonMobil's their announcement in the last couple of weeks. And when you think about Arkansas, you think about what's been going on in Northwest Arkansas for really the last many years with the boom that's occurred there and the economic strength of that region. Northeast Arkansas with steel industry and Mississippi County in particular, Fort Smith, which has been improving over the last several years, but now is ready, I think, to even take another big jump with a pilot training program that's going to be offered with the Air Force and all in that community. And now South Arkansas, I think a lot of people are describing that we could be in a golden age of economic development here in the state. And I'd like for us to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about that. And do our panelists agree that we are in that golden age? And if we are, or especially if we aren't, what are a couple of actions that we can take to make sure that we do continue to move forward the way that we can and take advantage of this momentum?
Yeah, I agree that Arkansas seems really well positioned across the state in many ways. You mentioned all of those different areas. We also see tourism and outdoor recreation growing. We see the arts growing. So it is an interesting time in Arkansas.
It is. And then what conversation wouldn't be complete in this day and age without talking about AI? To some extent. I think we're just a little bit over a year since ChatGPT, was released, and so you think about the attention that AI and especially generative AI have gotten over the last year, and I'd like for our panelists to talk a little bit about how they see that really impacting our economy, and then which industries they feel like are best positioned at this point to really maximize and optimize productivity as it relates to AI.
Yeah, I think that will be an interesting discussion, and particularly, there's always this balance, right, of productivity and potential job loss. I know, I have my own thoughts about the way that technology tends to disrupt, but it tends to grow, the economy. But certainly there's different views and opinions on that.
That's right. I think you and I have talked before, and it's something that we talk again about within our company at Arkansas Blue Cross is how do we find that harmony? That harmony between, being human-focused and then technology. And I think with AI and the potential that it brings, it's going to be even more incumbent upon us to find that sweet spot and that balance that you're talking about.
I suspect one thing that we will hear at least something about is what's happening with inflation and the way that, maybe it's slowed down, but certainly it's something I'm sure you've been paying attention to.
We have, very closely. And when you look at, the job market still tends to be very strong right now. We do see inflation, I think, continuing to come down. Economic growth tends to continue to be positive, but there are a lot of indicators out there that would give you some cause for concern, and certainly for those companies that are in the transportation industry, they've seen, freight recession. We've heard that quite a bit referenced over the last 6 to 9 months, and if you think of that as a leading indicator, then what does that mean for the general economy at some point?
Yeah, that is exactly right. I think also interest rates will probably come up if I had to guess.
That's something we can all identify with, and exactly, I think it will, no question. And just the overall tightening of the money supply, and what does that mean for economic activity going forward?
Yeah, and certainly I assume there will be some discussion about, predicting the Fed's next moves, which many like to do.
Good luck.
It can be a little hard to predict, but certainly that's clearly having an effect and will continue to have an
question.
effect.
As well as, you just think about the geopolitical situation around the world right now. We have 2 wars that are being fought. We've got our challenges, certainly in our relationship with China, between China and the United States. And so how is that going? Here recently we've had some maybe attempts to thaw that relationship. We'll see if those are beginning to take hold. And then really you think about coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of countries, the United States included, really took a more proactive view of industrial policies. And so again, how can you build a more resilient economy within your own country and be able to produce more things there? And we certainly are seeing that in the U.S. with the semiconductor industry, funds going there. And so what has been the impact of that, not only in our country, but also globally as well? So I think there's plenty to talk about, and I don't know that there's ever been a more time when you think about economic conditions and issues as well as the political environment where these things come together in such an impactful way.
Yeah, that's right. There is a lot happening out there, right? And disentangling those things is not always easy, and maybe not even always possible, because they do interact with one another. But, if you think about, we've talked about inflation, we've talked about interest rates, they've been moving. You just mentioned geopolitically, lots of things happening across the world that have both short and long-term impacts to them. And then I suspect, it'll be January 2024, we're in an election cycle next year domestically, right? So you put that all together.
Well, not only do you have what's our own election here in the United States, but it seems like I read recently 2/3 of the Democratic nations of the world will be going through an election in 2024. So we're going to see a lot of political activity, again, that's going to influence things economically throughout the world during this time period.
Curtis, as a CEO, when you think about, right, these are broad issues that are happening across the world, and this is why this moderator's role is so important. How does a CEO leader of an Arkansas company, how do you distill that and think about, and then how do you bring it into your company and either use it actionably or communicate it correctly to the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brent, and it's something that I feel like is one of the most important jobs of a CEO, is to really be that link to the outside world, the external world, and to take this information. And certainly you always need good support from your leadership team to be able to do this, but to take that information and to begin to distill it in such a way that it can be of value within your organization. We spent quite a bit of time, just as an example, earlier this year, watching obviously very closely the Congress and would they approve a budget going forward. What are the implications for our business? And we have to be thinking about that. In healthcare, what happens if certain types of payments get suspended, or other issues begin to take shape. What does that do? We have an investment portfolio, that we rely upon for income. And so what happens to that? So you begin, modeling and thinking through all those issues. And again, it's an important part of my job, I feel like, is, okay, what is, where do you really focus when there are so many different things out there that could distract you if you're not careful?
So, Curtis, as CEO, I know you're spending some of your time thinking, you've got to manage to the quarter and annually. You're thinking 5-10 years out. How do you kind of balance that in your role?
Yeah, and Brent, that's a great question. And what I try to do is balance is a great way to say it, and it probably is a little bit seasonal as well, and especially first quarter of the year. Again, thinking much more longer term at that point, and not just looking for the rest of the year, but again that 3 to 5, 10 year time period. Spend quite a bit of time other parts of the year as well thinking through that. We have our board. We bring them together for a dedicated retreat session in the summer. Spend a lot of time getting ready for that as well. So if I had to ballpark it on time, I'd say probably 40% or so of my time is really spent thinking out in the future like that.
Well, one thing I really like about the Forecast Luncheon is there's some near-term information.
That's right.
And then there's certainly some longer-term information. And so you kind of get a view geographically, local, domestic, international, but then you also get it over time horizons as well.
That's right. One thing I've enjoyed doing is I get I do provide each March we're really actually required through our bylaws to provide an annual report to our members and to our directors. And so as I'm working on the one for this year, I always go back and look at the previous years. So how right was I, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. And I'm pretty good. I'm pretty
good forecaster.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm great, but I'm pretty good. I hit it more times than not. And it's amazing when you look at that. And sometimes it's just a matter of degree. Things that you really thought were going to be significant issues. They turn out to be an issue, but not quite as much as you thought. But then those that kind of sneak up on you as well. So it's always interesting and helpful to go through that exercise and that process because, again, my role is to help interpret that for the rest of our organization. Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's so much of the value that really comes out of the Business Forecast Luncheon. And another thing that I think we'll get to see is there's some real localized issues that we'll discuss. One of which, in Northwest Arkansas particularly, is housing. That's right. and availability of housing and affordability of housing. And I think probably that affordability is something that stretches across every region of Arkansas.
That's right. There's no question. And not only are we a statewide employer, we have a significant employee presence in Northwest Arkansas. Mm-hmm. So we hear that from our employees. We'd like to have even more employees up in Northwest Arkansas as well. But one of the challenges that we do run into is affordable housing. So we know that the business leadership, the Northwest Arkansas Council, others have made housing a priority. We're certainly supportive of that and glad to play any role that we can to help make that happen. But that is one that's going to be critical, we think, in order for that region to continue to grow the way that it has and really be all that it can be going forward. Absolutely.
Well, Curtis, thank you for agreeing to be our moderator. I know you'll do a fantastic job, and I really look forward to getting to hear the international perspective, the domestic perspective. I'm a little biased. The statewide perspective with Mervyn is usually my favorite. He tends to be one of the most entertaining.
Well, Mervyn is quite the talent. There's no question. So Brent, again, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again so much for allowing me to serve in that capacity, and I can't wait.
Me either.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Walton College, thank you for joining us for this captivating conversation. To stay connected and never miss an episode, simply search for Be Epic on your preferred podcast service.